It was not the fastest jet in the sky. It was not the most beautiful. The Americans laughed at it. The RAF didn't even want it. But somewhere in Moscow, in the offices of Soviet Naval Intelligence, there was a file. And on the cover of that file was one word, one aircraft.
The Buccaneer.
The Second World War had barely ended when Britain found itself staring at a new problem, a Soviet one. Stalin's navy was growing, fast, and at its heart was something that made Royal Navy planners deeply uncomfortable, the Sverdlov class cruiser. Fast, heavily armed, and built in numbers. Like the German pocket battleships of the previous war, they were designed for one purpose: hunting convoys in the North Atlantic, strangling Britain's supply lines, winning a war before a single soldier fired a shot on land. Naval intelligence assessment from the early 1950s described the situation plainly. The Sverdlov class produced what became known as the Sverdlov crisis in the Royal Navy. They were faced with the Soviets deploying a large fleet of modern ships, possibly overwhelming them. The Royal Navy's answer was not another ship. It was an aircraft, a very particular kind of aircraft, one that could fly from a carrier deck, scream across the ocean at wave-top height where radar couldn't find it, and put a nuclear weapon into a Soviet cruiser before anyone knew it was coming. In June 1952, a specification was drawn up. Naval Staff Requirement NA-39. The brief was almost impossibly demanding. An aircraft capable of flying at 550 knots at sea level, with a combat radius of 400 nautical miles, carrying 8,000 pounds of weapons, including, if necessary, a nuclear bomb. The company that answered that brief was a small aircraft manufacturer from Yorkshire, Blackburn Aircraft Limited. And what they built would become one of the most capable and most underrated strike aircraft of the entire Cold War. They called it the Buccaneer. The Buccaneer did not arrive with fanfare. Its official project designation was the Blackburn Advanced Naval Aircraft, Banner. Its nickname followed naturally, the Banana Jet. It was not a flattering name. The aircraft did not look fast. It did not look glamorous. In an era obsessed with supersonic flight, with needle-nosed jets that seemed to be reaching for the future, the Buccaneer looked stubborn, planted, like it was built for something other than impressions. It first flew in April 1958, and from the beginning, it divided opinion sharply. The RAF offered the aircraft as a land-based strike jet, turned it down. They wanted the TSR-2, a supersonic marvel still on the drawing board. Then they wanted the American F-111. They got neither. Both programs collapsed under the weight of cost and politics, and the RAF, somewhat reluctantly, ended up with exactly the aircraft they had refused. In hindsight, that reluctance would become one of the more embarrassing miscalculations in British aviation history. One RAF pilot, speaking after his Buccaneer conversion course in the early 1970s, put it simply, "When we finally got the Buccaneer, we realized the Navy had been sitting on something extraordinary. We just hadn't been paying attention." Because the Buccaneer was not built for air shows. It was not built for speed records or newspaper headlines. It was built for one thing: surviving long enough over Soviet defenses to deliver its weapon and come home. And at that, it was quietly, almost arrogantly, superb. The Soviet air defense network was, by the 1960s, one of the most sophisticated in the world. Surface-to-air missiles, early warning radar chains stretching across thousands of miles, interceptor aircraft on standby, the kind of layered, interlocking system designed to make any attacking aircraft's life very short indeed. There was one weakness. Radar looks out, it does not look down. And the lower an aircraft flies, truly low, wave top low, below the curvature of the Earth relative to a radar installation, the more invisible it becomes. The Buccaneer was designed around this single insight. It flew at very low level and at very high speed, specifically to penetrate Soviet air defenses below the radar picture. Not by being stealthy in the modern sense, No special coatings, no angular geometry. Simply by being so low and so fast that by the time anyone knew it was there, it was already gone. RAF Buccaneer squadrons trained for this constantly. Low-level sorties over Scotland, over the North Sea, at heights that made ground crews nervous and farmers complain. The crews became experts at a kind of flying that most military pilots only read about. Not daring for its own sake, but precision. Controlled aggression at 50 feet above the water, at 500 knots, in the dark, in the weather, for hours at a time. The Buccaneer made the ordinary extraordinary. The question was never whether it could fly that low. The question was whether the man inside could so. By the early 1970s, the Buccaneer had taken on its most serious role yet. RAF Germany operated 3 Buccaneer squadrons, numbers 15, 16 and 208, assigned directly to Supreme Allied Commander Europe. Their job, in the event of a Soviet advance through the Fulda Gap, was nuclear strike. Specific targets, specific coordinates. Command installations, supply depots, concentrations of Warsaw packed armor that NATO's conventional forces could not stop. Each aircraft was loaded in peacetime with WE-277 nuclear weapons. Crews sat quick reaction alert, QRA, ready to launch within minutes of the order that, if it ever came, would mean conventional war had already failed. But there was another mission, a darker one, less discussed. The Honington-based Buccaneer squadrons were assigned to Britain's national plan, the scenario in which the UK might have to act alone, without NATO allies. Their task was to clear a corridor through Soviet defenses in the Baltic region and Poland, striking command installations and air defense sites so that the V-bombers could reach deeper targets still. Moscow, Leningrad. The crews who flew these missions in exercises never spoke of them in operational detail. They still don't. What is known is that the planning was precise, the training was relentless, and the aircraft, the unglamorous, unwanted banana jet, was entirely equal to the task. The last RAF Buccaneer flew in March 1994. The Cold War it had been built to fight was over. The Soviet Navy it had been designed to destroy had dissolved along with the Soviet Union itself. The nuclear targets it had been assigned were, officially, no longer targets at all. History had moved on. The Buccaneer had not been asked to move with it. Its work was done. 209 Buccaneers were built in total. Not many by the standards of great aircraft programs. No version of it was ever exported widely. Only South Africa flew it outside Britain. It never achieved the fame of the Spitfire, the celebrity of Concorde, the mythology of the Vulcan. Most people, even today, have never heard of it. The Soviets knew about it, though. In the archives of what was once the Soviet Navy's Intelligence Directorate, somewhere in the post-Cold War chaos of declassified files and transferred documents, there are assessments of the Buccaneer, analyses of its performance, studies of its attack profiles, calculations of how much warning time a Soviet cruiser would have if a Buccaneer was inbound at 50 feet and 500 knots. The answer, in most scenarios, was approximately none. The Sverdlov crisis had produced the Buccaneer. The Buccaneer had made the Sverdlovs irrelevant. That is the cleanest summary of what the aircraft achieved. And it took 30 years, thousands of training sorties, a nuclear deterrent held in cold storage, and one desert war to make it visible. The Buccaneer never fired a nuclear weapon. It never sank a Soviet cruiser. It never launched the mission it spent 30 years preparing for. That is not a failure. That is the best possible outcome. The weapon that is never used because the enemy knows it works. That is the most successful weapon of all.